Welcome to the Becoming Ageless podcast, where we engage in extended conversations to promote a youthful biological age and improved health span. I'm your host, Robynn Fredericks, holistic and integrative health practitioner. Join us as we delve into the transformative journey of Liz Parrish, a pioneering figure in gene therapy and patient advocacy. Today, we hear how Liz's personal narrative intertwines with the profound impact of gene therapy on health span extension and combating age-related ailments. Explore the scientific innovations, regulatory hurdles, and collaborative initiatives driving the advancement of gene therapy as depicted through the lens of BioViva's comprehensive platform. We also discuss the ongoing research, the importance of patient advocacy, and Liz's personal vision for making advanced treatments available and accessible to improve global health span. Liz Parrish is CEO of BioViva, as well as a humanitarian, entrepreneur, innovator, author, an advocate for genetic cures, and a proponent of progress and education for the advancement of regenerative medicine. While this broadcast was recorded last year prior to my accident, the person and the information is probably even more relevant today. I hope you gain much information from listening to this show. Liz, welcome to the show. I'm really excited to have you here. There is so much information I want to dig into. I want to first hear about how did you get started in all of this and all the gene therapy, and then we'll talk about being patient zero. I have a whole list, so let's just let's just start from the very beginning because I know that we have a lot of people who are very interested to hear that you're a mom. You're not just this big biotech person. You actually are a woman with a child with two, right?
I have two, yeah.
Oh, yeah. All right. So tell us about how you got started in all of this.
Yeah, so I guess the first thing on my resume is mom,
I
and,
love that.
and actually that's a lot of credential, for anyone who's ever done it and, managed a home with young children, kudos to you. It takes a lot of skills, to do it correctly. I hope I did.
You're right.
Sure. Anyway, so my focus in college was biology. I did not finish my degree, but whilst I was taking care of my kids, I was always up on what was happening in the space. And I think it was 2011, I got an opportunity to be part of a stem cell education program. So I did that for a couple of years. I fell in love with the genetics behind stem cells, why a stem cell behaves the way it does and why other cells don't have that regenerative ability. And I sort of started heading down a rabbit hole with that and getting into a lot of problems in the space of stem cells in which we are now trying to solve with my company now. So anyway, it was an interesting beginning into the regenerative medicine space. But in 2013, about 2 years later, my son was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes and ended up in the hospital, children's hospital, and asked where these new regenerative therapies were for type 1. There was a lot of work in research around stem cells and biobanking of pancreases and things like that. But they told me that this new medicine is experimental medicine and that they don't use that in children. And that there were kids there in the hospital who were dying, and I should be lucky that my child has a treatable condition. The problem with it was it just didn't really sit very well with me, more so even that there were children there who were dying, potentially of diseases that I had seen in research that were being cured in animal models. So I always said I never really went home from the hospital. We kind of, as a mother, you have a couple of choices when your child has a chronic disease. You go home and bake cookies and try to, be as supportive and make things awesome, or you go and try to find a cure for that disease. And my idea was the latter. So I started traveling around to conferences looking for cures for childhood disease and how to translate them. And I just so happened to go to a conference in the UK that was about aging because the professor of genetics from Harvard, who turned out to be a co-founder in my company now, was speaking there. And I kind of went in acting like I knew a little bit about aging, which I knew nothing, and realized that by treating biological aging with gene therapies, we could actually expedite cures to kids. And that then became the mission of the rest of my life.
That's a beautiful story. It's an amazing story. Um, it is really sad the place of American healthcare, all of the loops that you have to jump through. Jumping ahead to 2015, you became patient zero. And tell us a little bit about what you did and why you decided to do it.
Yeah, so that was probably what was that 2013 when my son was diagnosed, and later in 2013 when I learned about aging, and I was put in contact with someone who hadn't spoke at that event, named Bill Andrews, whom you know, and he had a basis in telomere science. And, anyway, I started to connect with all of these people in the space. I found people who were experimenting with other gene therapies, called, follistatin that increase muscle mass and probably fight against metabolic disorder. Telomeres being the most promising technology of the time and still a technology that will need to be used in all of the technologies that we build, therapeutics that we build going forward. It lengthens the caps at the ends of the chromosomes, and these caps, as they shorten, are associated with illness, poor health, and eventually death. So your body needs to repair its tissues over time, and it does that by dividing cells. And there's a cellular division limit in cells that keep them from actually doing that past a certain point. And these telomeres and lengthening telomeres actually releases that stop point and turns it into a situation where you could ultimately have unlimited regeneration. So these two technologies seemed really important to me, and I wanted to move very quickly with a new company that I was forming. So in 2015, I formed a company called BioViva, and that's the company that we're talking about today, with the sole goal of treating biological aging through gene therapies, therapies in which you would only need to get done one, two, or three times in your entire life to extend your healthy lifespan. No more bottles of pills or anything like that because I'm terrible at taking those things. And that and that by, the development of these technologies, we could then tackle childhood disease. So these two genes also treat childhood disease. And to this day, we have about 8 to 10 candidates. They all treat aging and a childhood disease.
Nice.
And so we launched the company with me taking the first gene therapies to treat biological aging.
I think that's, so many people are like, "Oh my gosh, she's so brave." But, I want to make a clear point to everybody that it wasn't like, there were some researchers in a lab one day who were just playing around with a petri dish and said, "Oh, hey, look, this looks interesting. Let's pop it in a human and see what happens." This has been tested in mouse models for years.
Over and over and
Yes.
over and over. We just
Yes.
did a new study with a new vector. That paper's out in PNAS. It's a peer-reviewed journal for people who are not on the sciencey side. And we extended the lifespan of mice by 41%. And here are mice getting healthier lifespan and not humans. And so I'm a huge proponent of patient advocacy and access. So, I
Absolutely.
really stood up to that. And today, what you're going to start seeing is drug companies that are selling drugs that people actually want to take. I mean, that really hasn't ever historically been the case with any drug company, right? We take probably, some of the best medicine we've ever made are antibiotics, and then arguably a lot of the immunizations that we've historically made have increased lifespan quite significantly, if not exponentially. But most drugs are sick care drugs. People wait till you get sick and they treat a symptom of that sickness. We're going right to the cellular level to make cells behave more youthfully. And of course, this is the area where investors, founders, and the whole world actually want to participate in these drugs.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We're going to get into all of the mechanisms and everything, but just to give everybody an idea, um, I looked it up. Your age when you started it was 44, correct?
Yes, I was 44 when I started, and I'm 52 now.
And your biological age when you first took the gene therapy.
So biological age can be measured in many different ways. At that time, we didn't have epigenetic clocks, so we did an average telomere age for what how they assess data. And so my telomere age for when I went before treatment, when I was 44, was about 62.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And that's kind of really the average American. I mean, most, and probably all around the world, um, most people's biological age, which is the age that your body perceives that it is much higher than their actual age.
Well, yeah, certainly, because when you look at how long a person could live, it's about 120. We believe that that's the cellular division cap in the perfect circumstances. But most people in the United States only live to be in their late 70s, right? 78 is an average lifespan age, and actually it's gone down with COVID, unfortunately. We haven't seen it go up. Now, the United States has the shortest lifespan of all the industrialized countries. You should know that as well, and that's a reflection of our healthcare system. But going back to that, my pre-testing biological age was 62, 63, and that would put me on the trajectory of when my family typically dies. So I was in my 40s, and then if you consider, like, you could have lived to 120 in your perfect circumstances, you'll probably live to 80,
Right.
83, or something like that in the actual circumstance.
Well, fortunately, you have jumped on this. So your biological age or your telomere age, as of right now, do you have an idea of what it is?
My telomere, so when we measure telomeres, again, we can't measure them in all parts of the body. And telomeres are just one hallmark of aging. And this is so, in order to cure all of aging, we need to reverse all the hallmarks. But my telomere age in my T lymphocytes is about 28.
Nice.
Not
Very
bad.
cool. Not bad at all. Not bad at all.
And that's out in a peer-reviewed paper that you can look up, or I can give you the, links so you can share them.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, so let's back it down just a little bit. I love letting people know because if you're watching this on YouTube, you can see how beautiful she is. She does not look like she's in her 50s. Don't shake your head at me. Um, tell me, help us to understand what is cellular aging.
Yeah, so what is cellular aging? So when we look at treating aging, we need things to pinpoint. And historically, what drug companies have done is treated symptoms of symptoms. So aging is what is happening that causes dementia and heart disease and cancer and organ failures, okay? And when you go to the doctor, they actually treat you, they look for a symptom of aging, which would be those diseases. Those are just symptoms of aging cells, and those are the diseases that happen when our cells age. Then they'll give you a drug that treats a symptom of those diseases. So let's say you have cardiovascular disease, they might give you a statin that is supposed to affect your LDL cholesterol. Vastly bad drugs. Don't stop taking them. I'm not a doctor. I'm not here to tell you to take them or not. I'm telling you that better medicine is coming because statins cause dementia and type 2 diabetes in many, many of the people that take them. And those are also not good outcomes. But they slow the progress of the cardiovascular disease, let's say. But when we look at, so what we want to do is we want to go and pinpoint what is happening at the cellular level. Because when we have a therapy today, we don't want to look to treat a symptom of a symptom. We wouldn't look at treating, your downstream cholesterol. What we would look at is making cells so healthy and arteries so healthy that they no longer accumulate that damage, or they can clear the damage easily without causing stroke. So there are 9 hallmarks of aging that we adhere to. There are many more that are now coming, and they're considered a wish list to treat aging. And I think that that's fantastic. There are things like inflammation, but I kind of argue that things like inflammation happen because your cells are getting old. And they're more of a cytokine response. But anyway, let's not get into that. So, hallmarks of aging are things like genomic instability, and that's the number one hallmark for cancer, by the way, is
Okay.
genomic instability. So, our genome changes with time, it gets radiation damage. There are errors in replication, and so it's a very serious problem. There's telomere attrition, which we already talked about, and that's a hallmark of aging. Your caps at the ends of your chromosomes get shorter, and therefore you are more predisposed to things like genomic instability and mitochondrial dysfunction.
Right.
There's epigenetic alterations. Everyone's starting to hear about DNA methylation clocks, and that is what that is looking at. It's how your genes are expressing differently over time. Very cool. We had a kit for a while. There's loss of proteostasis, meaning that your genes are no longer making properly folded proteins, which can be a problem because things like glycation and the buildup, well, you've seen cataracts in eyes, right? That filming over, that's the buildup of, endpoints that are not being cleared anymore. So deregulated nutrient sensing, that's an intra and extracellular issue. Mitochondrial dysfunction. Mitochondria are the powerhouses of the cell, and we showed in our last paper that lengthening telomeres does help them actually look better and perform better. Cellular senescence are old zombie cells. So your body needs cells that are non-dividing cells in order to send off inflammatory markers when you have a wound. The problem is as we age, these zombie cells build up and they're still sending off these markers of, oh, there's inflammation here, which causes more inflammation. Yet your immune system is actually not good enough to actually solve the problem anymore and clear the senescent cells. So they are a major problem with aging. Then there's stem cell exhaustion. You know that stem cells are little regenerative cells in your body that can differentiate into different cell types when you get a wound. So they can become skin, fibroblasts or whatever needs to happen to heal a wound. And there is a depletion of these, and this is a signaling problem with them. And that's why, older people have a harder time healing. And then there's altered intracellular communications within the cell. So I'm just going to talk about the 9 hallmarks today because
Right.
these were the things that actually gave us the ability to start targeting gene therapies towards treating aging.
Okay.
And that sort of simplifies the process if you understand what I'm trying to target to treat aging and why it's associated with you getting old. It's a beautiful paper. I love this paper. And I love the expansion of the data as well, because the more that we get expanded downstream or upstream effects of aging, we can actually take a drug and shoot it up and try to target that and see if we can reverse. If you can't really measure what you're treating, then things become very difficult. And aging is a multifactorial disorder, so it sort of clarifies.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. I love that, everybody's talking about the hallmarks of aging. You can Google it and you're going to get a huge list. And some of them are very technical, like what you're talking about. And then they even just give you like regular ones that the average person can look at and say, oh, yeah, I recognize that. So
Yeah, I mean,
it's
everyone
really
knows
going to help you.
inflammation,
Yeah.
Not everybody
Totally.
knows about their mitochondria. In the future, they will.
Yeah, yeah. Most people, it's like you say anything about mitochondria. And it's like, I remember that little guy from biology class. He's like in the center of the cell, right? What does he do again? That's about all they remember. And it is a technical science, but it's becoming so much more available to us. So with BioViva, what is the most exciting? Do you have one hallmark that you are like really excited by right now?
No, we wanna target all of them.
Okay.
So, the hard part about the company is we don't know how to target all of them yet, and so what we're doing is trying to solve gene therapy's biggest unmet need, which is larger payloads. So we're working with a multitude of genes that are associated with healthier and longer lifespans, proven in studies. So much like telomerase reverse transcriptase that you're talking about, that had already had a bunch of animal data and studies that showed that it was an influencer in aging. There are other genes as well. So we only choose like low-hanging fruit. We don't go, "Oh, here's some random gene. Let's do that." We look for reproducible data, and then we ensure that it's a lifespan uh, increaser and health span increaser. I mean, you wouldn't want to increase sick life. There's no sense in that. Um, and then we are now taking this new vector and using it to combine genes to see if we can get a super wave, see if we can target online hallmarks of aging with the technology that we already have. And that is exciting.
That is exciting. That is very exciting. So for people who don't really know, we're talking about, we're talking about health span, for the most part, which is just a healthy lifespan. And I know you've mentioned it before, and of course, I love looking up stats and the current numbers with World Health Organization. Non-communicable diseases are killing 41 million people a year, which is equivalent to 74% of all deaths globally. And for those of you who don't know, the top four: cardiovascular disease, cancers, respiratory diseases, and diabetes. That's just the top
Aging.
four. Aging.
They're all aging.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, I have friends, of course, I'm 57. So, my group of people, they'll post a comment on Facebook or wherever saying, "I woke up with aches and pains today. Welcome to aging. This is a beautiful thing. Let's embrace it." And
And
I'm
oh
like,
my gosh, and for anyone who cannot see the video, this woman is gorgeous, but I'm sure you know that because you found her through some sort of link and image. I mean, you are a poster
"Oh,
woman for aging well. So,
thank you very much. I
some
do my
yeah.
best with nutrition, and I'm waiting until all of your testing and everything makes it to mainstream America. So
Yeah, we want
I'm counting on you,
everyone to
Liz.
get these drugs. Everyone.
Absolutely, absolutely. Um, I want to know more about where you're going, where BioViva is going, how people. There's other people that are now doing gene therapy. You're not the only person anymore. What kind of results are happening in other people besides you?
Right. So one of the things that our company did was we realized that medical tourism is like when things boil over, when people can't get access to technology that is life saving, people go offshore to go find it. And we knew that there were companies that were already addressing this unmet need. So these are new and experimental therapies, by the way, as far as timeframes go for the regular regulatory system. There are people who are dying who need access to these technologies, and so we have come forward and said that any medical tourism company who is doing any work in this space, we will assess the data. And so there are people who go abroad to many different locations in the world that I can't really talk about
Okay.
to access this medicine. And they do it by consent between medical doctors and themselves. And they generally find these medical doctors by looking up companies who will connect them with medical doctors. And then again, we ask that patients allow us to assess the data, and we do that, and we put out papers when we have enough data on enough, the cohort is large enough to show an effect. And yeah, this is why, I'm pushing towards something called best choice medicine, where people could get this type of early access in the United States legally, because we have millions of people who need access to these new medicines, and the regulatory system is moving too slow. I mean, you can't say, well, we have to move slow because we don't have time, because we don't quite understand this technology, even though it's been reproduced in a multitude of labs. There's nothing new about it. And so therefore you have to die, and so does a few million people until we have time to assess whether this is safe enough for you. That's clinical trials are not safe inherently. They come with some risk. These new medicines are the most succinct, direct uh, to the expression of the exact enzymes that we're looking for. And so far, in all of medical tourism, we have not seen any adverse effects. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
Because we already knew how they worked,
Yeah.
in animal models. We knew that they were safe as possible. And now because of our assessment of data and working with nonprofits, we were even able to get 5 people with, life-threatening dementia access to gene therapy years in advance of the regulatory system. So I'm a huge proponent. I did my thesis at college around this new regulatory potential paths for the United States and any country in the world in which wants to expedite experimental medicine to patients who need it so that we can expedite a cure to the world.
That is awesome. Thank you for doing that. What about like the average person? Let's talk about Jane Doe,
Mhm.
and she's wanting to start working on her health span. Perhaps cancer runs in the family, arthritis, autoimmune, different diseases, cardiovascular. Are there things that she can start doing today?
Well, she should work with her doctor, and she should work with a physical therapist or someone down at her gym to design, the perfect diet and exercise in order to reduce her risk. It's definitely not my specialty. My specialty is terminal diseases with these gene therapies, and then getting them to the point where you're a Jane Doe
Right.
would take them at the age of 20 or 25, long before she's experienced the ravages of time and the increased risk of cancer,
Yeah.
therefore, hopefully protecting her against those diseases.
That's a beautiful thing. So is there no help for people who are, say, over 50? My age.
Look, well, certainly there is help, but I'm telling you, it's these more powerful medicines
Right,
that will be the ones that will dig us out of our trenches of
right,
aging, right? So, good diet and exercise certainly can expand the middle part of your life, but it will not keep you inevitably from dying of aging.
right.
And but it may give you, what we see in the data, 5 to 10 healthier years. Those are 100% worth it.
Oh,
Go
yeah.
for it. Do it. I mean, I think that people who take gene therapies will become more serious about their diet and exercise, wanting to get the best out of their therapies, right? But I mean, the gene therapy is in regenerative medicine is the only thing that will have significant gains in the long run. You can't just think happy thoughts and think that you're not going to die of aging. It's whether you believe it's a programmed mechanism of the cells or not doesn't matter. It's an evolutionary response that is programmed in, and we slowly deteriorate over time. When we look at the brains of like an 86-year-old that doesn't have dementia, the brain looks massively different than a 26-year-old. Okay. So, and that's someone who doesn't have dementia, who's healthy for their age. And we've all heard that. We've all, my parents would come home regularly with, healthy for your age. Oh, I'm healthy. Look, the doctor said I'm really healthy. And it's like, that doesn't mean that you wouldn't drop dead in the next 10 minutes of a heart attack.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Um, how can people get involved with BioViva? I know that you're starting to implement different programs. You've got a site for fundraiser, or not fundraiser, but investors. How can people help you to move this along more quickly?
Well, I mean, number one, if you don't have money to invest, don't worry about it. We don't want money from people who can't afford the high risk of trying to get a drug through regulations. Okay. These are, even if we believe we can get many drugs through regulations, but even knowing that today's drug development is $2.6 billion for one drug. That price has to come down. But that's the cost right now. So you can donate to our dementia study at any amount, but investing in the company, we have a very high bar because we do not want to take any money from anyone who cannot afford the development of these therapies. We believe that this is something that people with the wherewithal, people with money and large firms need to come together so that we can democratize and create an inexpensive, affordable drug for the entire world. But you can share our information as well, sharing our posts. Our media team does a great job. We've got a little group that works on, getting posts out and talking about what we do and things like that. And, contact us and ask questions or, suggest that we, let's say, put out a video on something specific that you want to know more about. I think we want to start doing that a lot more because I'm a huge proponent of education. If you have a disease and you're interested what's happening in the gene therapy space, you can go to the Code Keeper. It's bioviva-codekeeper.com. And it is a repository that we're putting together for free for the world, so that you can see like what's happening in cardiovascular disease or what's happening in chronic kidney disease in the gene therapy space. And maybe you want to fund the technology, but you want to look at something specific. Well, you can go there and find the papers, therefore, find the researchers who did the basic research in the area and fund them.
Yeah.
You don't want your future drugs to come in a pill. You want to have a shot and forget it for 5 or 10 years. That's the future of gene and cell.
Okay. That's cool. I like that. It's very cool. Um, your son, how is he?
Well, right now he is probably just ate something. He's working on high blood sugar, it looks like. So I monitor him all the time. Anyone who's ever traveled with me will know that, I have his monitor on all the time. And if he has a critical low or a critical high blood sugar, I contact him. There are a few really great drugs coming in type 1. I have to tell you a story, and
Yeah.
this is my level of frustration. So my son was diagnosed in 2013, and then in 2014, I met this amazing group of scientists in Miami who already had patient data of several patients who had gotten a islet cell implant into their livers
Mhm.
in which they did not need insulin for a year. So let's define type 1 diabetes is not type 2 diabetes. It cannot be controlled by diet and exercise. It's an autoimmune disease where your immune system attacks your pancreas and it specifically attacks the cells that make insulin. So islet and beta cells are all behind this. So they took those cells and they put them into livers, which your liver is immune privileged. The immune system does not attack it. Interesting fact. And these people were off of insulin. And so, insulin is the sixth most expensive liquid in the United States. People die because they can't afford to get access to it, even though it only costs pennies to make it. It is a highly deadly substance. If I had a drop of insulin in my hand right now and injected into my body, I would die within a short period of time. Okay.
Wow.
It would make my blood sugar collapse. And so these type 1 diabetics go between high and low blood sugars constantly. You eat something, you don't cover the right amount, your blood sugar goes up. Anyway, I'm traveling and I see these videos of people. This is all, no, the world doesn't know about this. Here are these people doing, an interview saying, I haven't taken insulin for a year. And to me, my son could die within an hour from now every single day. And we have alarms go off in the middle of the night. And I mean, it's very scary. So anyway, I was like, wow. So anyway, when I asked around, people were like, "Oh no, this isn't." Well, just in 2021, a guy finally gets access to this therapy in a clinical trial and had been, the last time I checked, he had been off of insulin for over 8 months. So it's not that the therapies don't exist. It's that we don't get access to them because everything moves too slowly. We're so afraid of hurting someone that, you know how many people died since I learned about that technology and this one guy got access to it?
Yeah. I don't even want to know that number. I'm sure
It's a
it's
lot.
it's a lot. It's a lot. Can we do anything like contacting our state senators or anybody to start trying to say, "Hey, you need to be on this. You need to start getting on the FDA. We need to make changes." Can we do anything along those lines?
Yeah, absolutely. I even have a petition you can sign. It's at bestchoicemedicine.com. Best Choice Medicine, all squished together as
Right.
one word on a URL, .com. And it gives people a place to go to sign off there. And yes, of course they could. We know how fast the FDA can move. Within 10 months, we had an immunization for COVID within 10 months. And I hope that it did save a lot of lives. But the number of people who died from COVID, almost most of them were all aging related, by the way. They had immune senescence. People started testing the telomeres of people who were most likely to die
Oh, wow.
of COVID, and they had short telomeres because your immune system can no longer create those cellular divisions to attack the virus. And it's a fraction of the amount who die of aging every year, a fraction. So, yeah, it's really important that you call it from the mountain.
We do. We need to start talking about this.
Yeah,
We need to find out what's going on, what's happening. I love that you have the ability for somebody to go on with the code keepers and find out what kind of research is being done for a specific area because maybe it's their child or maybe a grandchild. Find out. Do some homework, become your best health advocate and find out what's going on and then start doing anything and everything to make noise. We're good at
absolutely.
that. We're good at that with social media. We can do that. So,
Absolutely. That's what we need social media for. We need help so much that, people demand access. Look, AIDS was a similar case. People had HIV, they were dying in droves. They marched on Washington, D.C. And within a year and a half, I believe, they had drug candidates that were combinatorial drugs. So just like aging, they looked at this and they said, "Oh, what are we going to do here? Let's try one drug and these people. Let's try another drug and these people." Well, it had some effect, but they needed to combine the drugs, and people started to demand the access to combinatorial therapies. Another good instance of, a lot of people think aging as a disease. Well,
I was going
we
to ask
want you to
that.
get chronologically old. I want you to get old by years, but I don't want you to get biologically old because that will take the health and goodness away from your life. And people say, "Oh, no, aging is a natural process." But, it wasn't till the 1960s that the government would take cancer seriously because they considered it a natural process of getting old. They thought that cancer was just an aging associated disorder and it was part of aging. And go look it up. All the information is there from the historic archives of cancer. It took person who was just a patient advocate to get together with a bunch of medical doctors and say, "We're petitioning that cancer is treated as a disease." And because of that, people are living decades past diagnosis, and some people have had a cure.
Yeah, I hear so much about, just like you said, aging is a part of life and we all have to go sometime. I think that we should have more of a choice in
Yeah,
what
and it doesn't mean like, okay, so you're gonna die someday. Like, I don't think death is nothing to be afraid of, the
Right.
nothingness, but like suffering, we don't allow people to suffer. And we've all decided as a society that we want to cure dementia, that we think that cancer is inhospitable, and that, cardiovascular disease is the silent killer that people are putting millions of dollars into nonprofits to find a treatment for. but you can't cure them unless you go after aging. It's the cellular degeneration over time that is causing those diseases. And that is what we need to target. That is what we have to go after. There are graphs. I've presented them before. And if you cured cancer, let's say you cured cancer, terrible hummer of a disease,
Yeah.
you only extend the average lifespan of a person by 2 to 4 years.
Wow.
People
That's
don't know that.
amazing. Yeah.
They think if you cured cancer, then we're like free. We're like, we're just it's over, we'll be fine with diet and exercise. We can fix it. It's not. They're all burning at the same time. Like very few people would know anyone over the age of 70 that doesn't have multiple comorbidities, that doesn't have some amount of atherosclerotic plaques, that's driving some sort of cardiovascular issue, valve issues,
Mhm.
some form of memory loss and loss of brain plasticity, and increased risk of cancer or at least failing kidneys. They would all have failing kidneys
Oh,
at that point. So,
absolutely.
to some degree, and
Right.
so what I'm saying is, you have to go after the master switches, and that's what we're trying to find.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the another little stat from World Health Organization, which was really quite alarming when I read it the first time, is they have discovered that 20% of the average person's life is spent in disease, in chronic disease, the last 20% of a life. And I just look at my own parents just to look at those numbers. And while he did live to be 91, and that is amazing, he between the arthritis of his knees and he ended up having a valve replacement in his early 80s. He spent this very active man spent the last 10 years of his life in a chair being
Sorry.
depressed. And thank you, but this is part of what people don't understand.
Yeah,
And
and for most people, especially people with socioeconomic issues, it's over 30%.
yeah,
A lot of them due
yeah,
to, stress, poor eating because cheap food is full of things that are not very good for you. I mean, we're talking about people who can't work after the age of 55, 60.
yeah. Yeah, that's a terrifying. It's terrifying numbers. What about for you? What is next for you? Will you continue trying different gene therapies? Are you excited about something down the line? Can you share with us anything that is happening with you in your direction besides BioViva?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm just so pumped up. I'm becoming a little bit of a serial entrepreneur. Cereal is so good, but it's so bad for you. I can only think now. Um, whenever somebody says that about entrepreneurship, I'm like, sounds delicious.
Wow.
Um, so I'm working towards getting in front of some government people about regulations and where we need to go. But I'm really busy with BioViva. It really is most of my time. I'm working with groups who want to bring in the best choice medicine idea to other countries, and that's really exciting as well. And I may be working on another gene therapy company that may target eyes. And I've always had a super fascination with eyes.
Yeah.
And so that would be really exciting. But BioVivo is the most of my focus, and everything else is only a percentage of my time. And going into a money raise now to actually get those combinatorial gene therapies to humans. And so that'll take a while and be really expensive. And so that's why I really need to focus my energy there because at the end of the day, you know, um, whether we benefit from it or not, I do not want to leave our children with these diseases. And I think not only will we benefit from it, I think that I have already benefited from it, but I would like to cure all of aging in my lifetime. And
Right.
that will take a lot of coordination with other companies and groups, and we work well and play well with everyone for that purpose.
Very good. That is some great information. And Liz, I mean, I have to tell you that in my eyes, you are a superhero. And we're all rooting for you. We are completely rooting for you. We know that this can be done. We know that it is sorely needed in our society. And thank you for
Thank
spearheading
you.
gene therapy. Thank you for searching for all of the ways to increase health span for everyone globally. And I think it's an amazing, amazing cause. And if people want to learn more about gene therapy or BioViva, you can, of course, visit the website bioviva-science.com. Liz, you said that you have a team that's on social. Where can they find you?
Oh gosh, I'm not very good with social media. I like check in on them occasionally, my personal ones. We were on Twitter, we are on Instagram,
Okay.
we are on Facebook still. And I say Twitter still, it seems like there's a
I know.
mass exodus. And there's so like this will be so dated, so I shouldn't even say it. But like everyone's, up and it's. I'm not sure how this cancel culture is going to go, but we are on these platforms. We are on LinkedIn, and you can find me personally on LinkedIn. And you can find us our website. You already shared. And if you have questions, you can send them to info@bioviva-science. And my PA, who is fantastic, will answer those or send them off to the right or wrong people. And we'll eventually get them to the right people and try to answer your questions.
That's awesome. Okay. Can't
We
wait
all
to-
do that, I'll be like, well, let's send it over to this guy. And then that guy's like, that's not my area. I don't know
Oh
it.
my gosh. Oh my gosh. And let me add to you that BioViva, the website, BioViva-Science, does have a newsletter that you can subscribe to. And
Oh,
I
yeah.
have done that and some amazing articles that is up to date information, even things that you could be doing today with, diet. There's a little bit of everything in there for everyone.
Yeah, and
So
if you really want to follow just like gene therapy explicitly, our newsletter for BioViva is amazing. I love how it's written. We talk about it every week. We talk about some key points, and we're always kind of pushing boundaries and getting people talking about new ideas. One of my favorites was when we talked about the performance enhancement of sports players. And this got people kind of, "Oh, what do you mean? You could use gene therapy. You shouldn't do that. That's doping." But it was clearly pointed out that, there are people who are born with genes that are an advantage to them over you, and whether that be intelligence or sports or anything else. And so it really started some great conversations and some eye-opening moments. But also the bioviva-codekeeper.com. If you sign up there, we're working on getting newsletters out because every week I probably read all on my own about 10 or 15 new industry cutting edge things that are happening or companies getting funded. And we want to share that information. We want to make sure that people know what's also happening in the gene therapy space. Now that one will be a little bit more technical and boring than our newsletter. I think our newsletter is fun and good to read.
it is good to read. It's easy to read. So definitely sign up for that, you guys. And if you have any questions about this show today, please head over to our Instagram, which is Becoming Ageless Podcast, and you can drop your question under this show's poster, and I'll make sure that Liz gets it, whether it's through Katerina, her PA, or any other way.
Well,
We'll make
just
sure she
get
sees
me
it.
hooked up. Get me hooked up,
I
and
will get you hooked up,
I'll
girl.
keep it open on a device and
There
take
you
it
go.
when I know.
You heard it, guys. You heard it. And if you want to catch up with me, you can, of course, find me all over social media at Robynn Lynn, RBYNNLIN, where I share my own tips for both living agelessly as well as decreasing bioage and increasing health span. So our show website is becomingagelesspodcast.com, where you can catch up with all of the past episodes, and I encourage you to subscribe to stay in the know. And please be sure to share the show today. And of course, you can find every link that we mentioned in this episode listed in the show notes. So you guys, thank you so much for being with us today. And I hope you'll join me next time here on Becoming Ageless as we discover new tips, tricks, actions, and science to increase your whole health span. Stay ageless, y'all.